What began during the day carried on late into the night, their defiance undimmed. Earlier, hundreds of women stood arm in arm on the streets of Minsk, protesting their government's crackdown on free speech following Sunday's disputed election.
I came here to support our Belarusian people. Our women, children are being killed and beaten up, violated, taken away. We do not even know where they are taken. There must be some justice.
It was videos like this one that angered so many, appearing to show jailed protesters being beaten up in detention centres. Under pressure, President Alexander Lukashenko pinned the unrest on a disgruntled, unemployed rump. Everyone who is unemployed currently has to be looked after. They have to be offered a job. The core of these so-called protesters are people with a criminal past and those who are unemployed. These factory workers suggest otherwise. Stand up if you voted for Tikhanovskaya, the opposition leader, a man shouts. The room rises as one. Elsewhere, signs that trust in the system is running out. Onlookers helped this man in orange escape the clutches of police. Outsiders are paying attention too. The US has warned sanctions are on the table.
We want the people of Belarus to have the freedoms that they're demanding, that they think are in their best interests. We watch the protests. We urge that the nonviolent protesters be protected and not harmed.
Back on the streets, the protests were more subdued on Wednesday night. Go away, they chanted. No sign yet that this uprising has run its course.
Well, the post-election protests in Belarus were also at the top of the agenda at talks between the German and Norwegian foreign ministers in Berlin today. And our chief political editor, Michaela Küfner, was at those talks and joins us now for more. Michaela.
Yes, Ine Eriksen, Soreide, the Foreign Minister of Norway, is with me here right now. Minister, can you tell us, you spoke to Germany's Foreign Minister. What kind of historic moment is this in Belarus? What is the West called upon to do right now?
First and foremost, we are very concerned about the developments in Belarus right now, and we have condemned the use of violence by the security forces and also, of course, criticized the lead-up to the election. And what we have seen over the past days is, of course, people who want free and fair elections, which is a very clear and also very understandable demand. People should be entitled to have free and fair elections, and they should be entitled to have democracy.
Now, the EU had eased sanctions. Norway is not a member of the EU, but that was conditional. It wanted to see progress. What is your expectation looking towards that meeting of foreign ministers in Brussels tomorrow?
Well, I suspect that they will, of course, have this very high on the agenda and also have discussions on whether or not the conditions that are now no longer in place for easing the sanctions, again, will make it necessary to, again, start discussing sanctions.
Now, is this crisis now past a point of return? Could there at all be any kind of return to a normal with the current government in Belarus and President Lukashenko?
Well, as it seems right now, there is, of course, a very strong uprising for those who want free and fair elections and who want democracy. At the same time, we see that the opposition leader has come to Lithuania and is there for the moment. And we, of course, want to see democracy rise in Belarus, and that is also why we want to support forces who are able to make democracy also a part of Belarus.
Now, this is all taking place in a context. After all, Belarus is firmly within the Russian sphere of influence. What kind of signal would you expect now from your allies in the United States looking at this potential showdown, really what it is politically, between a European Union, a pro-democracy movement and a Belarus current regime?
Well, as you rightly point out in your earlier question, there has been a development in Belarus over time that gave reason for some optimism. And now we see that with conducting this election, that optimism has vanished again. And that is also why it's important for all Western countries and all democratic societies to support the quest for free and fair elections. That is something that every citizen in the world is entitled to, and that is also why we support that demand in Belarus.
Now, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland say they want to mediate, they want to launch a potential mediation process, organize some kind of transition. What are the chances of that actually being successful?
The trace of democracy is something that you always have to pursue, and to see that there are countries who would like to start a negotiation process or facilitate and mediate is of course positive. But we also have to bear in mind that for this process to continue and for it to be successful, we also have to have observers to elections. We have to have lead up to an election that can be called free and fair, and those are the main challenges that lie ahead of us right now.
Now, we heard the German foreign minister, with Germany having the EU presidency right now, hoping that the EU can find a common line. What if the EU doesn't? What kind of symbol would that be?
Well, I'm also hopeful that the EU will find a common ground on this. This is a question that engages most of the countries in Europe. And as I said, we were cautiously optimistic and hopeful some time ago that the development in Belarus also would go in a more positive direction. And that optimism is now gone. And that is also why we have to support those forces who want free and fair elections.
If you have to describe this historic moment in Belarus right now in one sentence, what would that be?
Well, it's difficult to describe these moments in one sentence, but I do think that there is a milestone taking place, or we've seen a milestone in Belarus right now, and we are, of course, hopeful that there will be free and fair election that can be observed also by international observers.
Ine Eriksen, Soreide, Foreign Minister of Norway, thank you very much. And with that, back to the studio.